Hello and welcome to a bonus edition of the UK Steelers podcast. You're not joined by Cy, he is busy. You're joined by me, Mike Farrell. And I've got the regulars. I've got Ketz, I've got Mark, and I am delighted to introduce, first of many editions of which he'll be joining us in the future, Trevor Sikkema from PFF. Trev, how are you keeping?
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate you guys having me. We were talking a little bit before the show, but I love the fact that you guys are as passionate as you are about NFL football from over in the UK. Man, that's so cool. So when you guys asked me to come on, I absolutely had to do it. So I'm excited to talk some Steelers with you guys.
So just to give any that aren't familiar with Trevor's work, because I think, Mike, you've probably listened to him for 5 years plus, same as I have. So the Draft Network podcast with Ben Solak back in the day, and now obviously a PFF's lead draft analyst. My favourite area of PFF generally, I must comment on that, and host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. So I'd recommend our listeners go and give that a shout out, give that a listen after we're done today.
Yeah, it's man, you bring it up obviously like getting to do Locked On NFL Draft with Ben, and then I was doing it with John Ledyard even before Ben, and like that was that's those are some great times. I absolutely love those. Those were a lot of fun to do, and then obviously getting to do it with Connor, who is one of my favorite people in the industry. It makes for, I think, a good show, but I appreciate you guys saying that you enjoy it as well. So that makes me feel good. I appreciate you guys listening.
No hassle at all, mate. As the follically challenged one on the podcast, there is a feverish hair envy on my side of things. I will just point out in
I have
advance.
hair envy for Connor, so I mean, don't feel like you're alone there. That guy logs on every single time, and I'm like, geez, all right, I guess I gotta make sure I'm holding up my end of the bargain
Up
here.
up that game to this level. No, fair play to you. Fair play to you. Trevor, first of all, So as UK Steelers fans, it's very much passion is definitely keen on regular season, but particularly ourselves here. You know, draft stuff is something which, from a personal perspective, I've probably been about 10 years now of kicking into draft season sort of around this time of year. Really, it started for me about 2012. 2012, and a friend of mine, God bless him, who's a Bears fan. We sort of sat down and said, well, we follow our teams religiously, which is great, but every April comes, we draft 7 or 8 guys, we pick up UDFAs, and we have no idea who they are until September comes. So we sort of kicked into gear and said, all right, we actually need to do a little bit of digging on our side of things. So it ends up getting to the point now for us, you know, when December time comes, it's all systems go in respective draft coverage. And a lot of hours, as I'm sure you do as well, considerably more than us, I can imagine. Tell us your thoughts, if that's all right. Just looking back a little bit to the existing 2023 Steelers draft class, and what were your initial thoughts post draft in terms of the guys that we've picked up?
Man, I think the Steelers were my favorite draft class of any team. I know I gave them an A, but I'm pretty sure I gave them an A plus, and I felt like this was my favorite draft they had because it just felt as though they got good value out of every single player. I got the list up right now, and Broderick Jones, okay, getting him at 14 in a good offensive tackle class, I thought was great for them, and we've seen really good return on investment from him already. Joey Porter Jr., a guy who a lot of people thought, okay, he could definitely be a first rounder. Like there was talks of him going at whatever it was, like 16 or 17 to the Washington Commanders. They ended up picking Emmanuel Forbes instead, but we thought that he might be a mid-round pick there. They end up getting him at the beginning of the second round. I think that's been very crucial for them because I think the other aging veterans on the team are showing that corner's probably a need for them again coming up this next draft class. So getting him was great. Loved Keanu Benton. I got to go to the Senior Bowl. And so like I watched Keanu up close and personal, just absolutely demolish interior offensive linemen all week. And so I thought that he was great. I thought that he was the fact that he got to go to Pittsburgh and play with / learn under Cam Hayward. I was like, this is just like to a T where I would want Keanu Benton to go. So like the Keanu Benton selection there, Darnell Washington, maybe I was too high on Darnell Washington, clearly, because he went 93 overall, but I had Darnell Washington as a top 20 player in the class. Like, I thought this dude was an extra offensive lineman when he was attached to the line of scrimmage. I thought he moved way too well for a dude who was his size. And so, 6'7", 270 pounds, basically. And so, like, I just thought he was a total freak athlete, and you could use him in so many ways. So I thought he was a top 20 player in the class. So for them to get him at 93, obviously I loved it. Like Nick Herbig a lot as a preferred pass rusher. Corey Trice was somebody who I really, really liked. Who, unfortunately, he suffered some injuries during his college football season, and obviously suffering an injury in his first NFL season as well. So when he was healthy, I've really liked him, and I thought that was a really good flyer for them to take there. And then, Spencer Anderson, I mean, it's just another 7th round pick, but I thought basically those first couple of selections there, every single one of them, it was like, I like that. I think that's really good value and a really good fit. I like that. It's really good value and a really good fit. So I thought that this was a perfect class for what they needed. And I think that we're already seeing a decent amount of return from a lot of those guys.
Oh, we loved it. We absolutely loved that class. I mean, there was a lot of the guys that we were high on. JPJ, a lot of us are high on. Keanu Benton. Yeah, I think I was pretty high on Keanu Benton, considering I've got his jersey on right
there
now.
We go.
So, yeah, I was hammering the table for him pre-draft. So when we picked him up, I was just absolutely delighted with that. Darnell Washington and Nick Herbig. Simon was a big fan of his as well. So it was a class that we were all very, very excited about. And I think for the most part, I think it's definitely. It's already starting to show in this roster how important they are already. So that's
I agree.
Great.
Yep, I definitely agree.
Okay, so this season, I think it's fair to say for us, despite the record we currently have, I think that's due to Tomlin more than anything else, and his ability to kind of win games in certain situations. But I think the record is perhaps annoyingly good. As someone that kind of watches the draft quite clearly, I'd prefer us to have a bit of a higher pick than we're potentially going to have. But what I'm kind of interested in is what you think our needs are for this coming season, and if we could maybe talk through a sort of a 2, 3, 4 round sort of mock who you would potentially flag to us as, okay, these are guys you need to go and watch the tape carefully of.
Yeah. First of all, I think that Mike Tomlin is proof that there is a God and that he is a God-fearing man. Because I don't really know how else they have a above 500 record now, other than just being in favor of a higher being. So I think that I feel like he's just a phenomenal coach. The way that he's been able to be above 500 every single season, unprecedented, obviously, and so he's doing it again with a roster that I think if most other coaches in the NFL are coaching what this current Pittsburgh Steelers is, maybe anyone other than Mike Tomlin, it would be a different story. But yeah, when I look at this roster, very clearly, I think that they're punching above their weight class right now with the current record that they have. And there's a lot of areas on the roster that need to get better. I don't think that Kenny Pickett is... I don't think we're like hitting the panic button on Kenny Pickett yet, but clearly they were drafting a quarterback and they were trying to find a quarterback in what was a down quarterback year, right? I mean, there's one first-round quarterback in that class. It was Pickett. And then you don't get another one till Desmond Ridder in the 3rd, Malik Willis in the 3rd. And it's Sam Howell, who might be the best of all of them, didn't even go to the 5th. So it was very clear the NFL just didn't know what to do with that quarterback class. So we're not totally hitting the panic button on Kenny yet. I wouldn't say that, okay, you got to draft a quarterback in the first round. I don't think they're going to do that. And so when I look at their needs of other impact areas for them, corner, I kind of hinted at, feels like the biggest one. You've got JPJ on one side, but then it's just aging vets, I think, all around the roster, and they need a legit other corner. I don't want to get too much into the little mock that we're going to do, but guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama, Nate Wiggins from Clemson, Terrion Arnold from Alabama, right? I think that those guys are in the conversation that could be day one starters for them. And it's really tough to start 2 young cornerbacks that young, either a second-year player and a first-year player. But it's something that they need to do because they just got to get a lot better and a lot more talent in that cornerback room. I think interior offensive line could also be improved upon, specifically, I think they could upgrade at center. But you're not taking a center super early. You're not taking a center in the first round of the draft. So just interior offensive line in general, I think that's something that you could get rounds 2 through 4 and potentially get an impact player, because this is a pretty good center class. I mean, there's a lot of guys that we could talk through that could be options for them, but there's a lot of different players that I think could be serviceable in starting centers for the Steelers. Maybe interior defensive line, like some depth there to go along with Keanu Benton, but I don't think that that's like the biggest need for them. Wide receiver, maybe, if you're losing Allen Robinson, and if I think it's kind of like shaky right now, like you're not getting consistency with George Pickens for as much as I like him. Deontay Johnson's sort of kind of been up and down, and I don't know, maybe doesn't like being there. I don't know. It just feels like weird at times, and so it just feels as though like that room is okay on paper, but it's sort of like teetering where a year from now, maybe only one of those guys is still on the team. And you want to stay ahead of wide receiver, especially in a really good wide receiver class. This group, I'm just getting through some regular season film evaluations of a lot of these guys. And just to give you and your listeners a point of view, I had Jackson Smith and Jigba as my wide receiver 1 last year. And I would have JSN as like wide receiver 6 or 7 in this year's class. Like, it's just that good. These players are just that good in this class. So wide receiver, not the biggest need for them, but because the class is so talented, maybe get ahead of what might be some changes coming up. So that's probably how I would see it. Corner's the biggest one. Oh, safety is another one. I think safety next to Minka is, because who did they have? Keanu Neal, and then who else is the other safety for
KZ,
them?
yeah, DeMonte KZ.
Yeah, DeMonte KZ. And it's like, okay, those are vet dudes, but it'd probably be good if you could get a stud safety, which you probably don't have to draft one in the first round this year. So you could probably, like, if they wanted a safety, second round is probably a sweet spot for them, because you'd want to get one of Tyler Nubin from Minnesota, Cam Kinchins from Miami. Maybe if you like Kalen Bullock, although Kalen Bullock's not really the type that I don't think that they would want. Those I think are some options. So I'll throw safety in there as well. But corner's the top need, and interior offensive line is probably next for me. And then some form of safety and wide receiver would be those like top 4 needs.
Yeah, I saw in your recent 2024 article you had Kinchins in the first round with pick 23, safety. Then you had DJ James out of Auburn, cornerback, in the second. And who was in the third?
Van
Pran from
wasn't
Georgia.
It? Yeah. I like that pick. Yeah, in terms of what you had there. But the centre class is quite intriguing. There's a couple of different options I've seen on there. Jackson Powers Johnson is a guy that I've really been keeping my eye on out of Oregon.
Yes.
That's a guy I'd really like to see don a Steelers shirt, to be honest. It's early days and still got to do a bit more of a deep dive into him. But he's winning honours everywhere at the moment by the looks of it for how good a year he's had. So it's an exciting class. I think you're right. Yeah.
No, there's no doubt about it. And there's so many guys that could play center too. They're, outside, I think, so Jackson Powers Johnson plays center right now. He'd be good. Zach Frazier from West Virginia, he plays center right now. He'd be good. We mentioned Cedric Van Pran as an option for them, plays center right now at Georgia. So like all of those 3 could be great options, but also there's a chance that Graham Barton, who plays left tackle for Duke, a lot of people talk about him kicking inside to guard. He could also be a center at the next level. He just has that kind of ability to him. I think Troy Fountain now is the same way, the offensive tackle for Washington. Both those guys don't really have the length to be able to play offensive tackle at the NFL level, but they're really damn good offensive linemen. So I think both of those guys could potentially play center. And then another name that I would throw out there too, who I don't think gets enough love in this class, is Christian Haynes from UConn. This dude's graded out very, very highly for us over the last 2 years. Jim Moore Jr. is his head coach. Jim Moore Jr. has been like on the record saying this is a starting caliber guard or center at the next level. And that's somebody who grew up around the NFL, was a coach in the NFL. So it's like he knows what that bar is like. He's not just saying it as a college coach who sent people to the league. He's coached guys in the league, and he said, yeah, this dude's a starting caliber player, and he moves really well. So not only are there good centers right now, there's good center projection players as well. So I think that bodes well for the Steelers. If, maybe you're not picking one in the second round, you start getting into round 3, round 4, maybe you could pick one of these players that I had named and move them to that position, and they could be comfortable there.
It's fascinating, that element of the college scouting, which is personally I find so difficult to translate when you've got someone playing at guard or a tackle with maybe a shorter length, trying to convert and say, okay, I can see that guy playing in center. But I suppose that's the benefit of pro days, the combine, that sort of stuff, bowl, senior bowl and the like and stuff. So we'll definitely keep an eye on some of those names, those that you wouldn't see on the list automatically as a center, as you say, you'd see OG or OT. So we'll definitely keep an eye on some of those, Trev. Cheers. Nice bit of intel there, mate. Thank you.
There you go. There you go.
It's definitely, yeah, personally as well, I think it's a massive area you need. You mentioned about the cornerback class in particular, and I always have a sense of trepidation with the Steelers because I don't think we've drafted a decent corner apart from JPJ in what seems like forever. There's a long list, unfortunately, of guys we've picked in the first sort of 2 to 3 rounds, which just haven't panned out for us over the years. But it's one of those positions with interior, the D line and the O line. It's just you can't have enough of them. Simply put, if you end up having a rookie cornerback who's an absolute star in his first year, great, find a second one, because you just can't have enough. And in the division that we're in, where we have to play Joe Burrow twice a year, for example, we and the AFC just generally, we have some stud quarterbacks, so we need that sort of level of depth. And it's, again, as we've seen this season, unfortunately, we have aging players in that position, so a bit of refreshing is going to go a long way.
Yeah, and as the game has just evolved to add more pass catchers on the field, defenses have to react to that, right? I think, we've seen over the last 5 years in particular, but this movement has been starting well before then. You see a lot of teams just basing everything out of 11 personnel now, right? You're getting 3 wide receivers on the field. A lot of teams, 11 personnel is their base offensive system, and they just have 3 wide receivers, 4 wide receivers that they can trot out there at any time. And it's not just like, oh, this happens to be our 4th depth wide receiver who we're just throwing out there. It's a legit passing weapon. It's either a veteran who's been around a while, who knows how to be savvy with spots in zone coverage or certain types of roles and routes, or it's a young developmental guy who's got a lot of talent and has that youthful athleticism to them. So as the NFL and offenses have done that, it's then the defense's job to say, like, all right, like you mentioned, I couldn't agree more. You can't just have one stud CB1 shutdown kind of a player. You've got to have 2 legit outside receivers. And then, in my opinion, you have to have a legit slot specialist, right? The slot player for a long time used to just be your 3rd best corner. You would put your 3rd best corner in the slot. And today, offenses are too creative with who they are putting in the slot for you to just say, yeah, whoever our 3rd best corner is, we'll just put them in the slot when we go to our nickel system. You have to have, in my opinion, a designated nickel cornerback. I almost feel like it should be a separate position on the roster. Like you have outside corners and you have nickel corners, because the quickness, the anticipation, how you play with leverage, how you shut down one of those 2-way goes, all that, like it's completely different to me than playing as a boundary corner, which comes with its own challenges. I'm not saying it's more difficult, but in a lot of ways, playing a guy from the slot and giving them all that space off the snap is more difficult and it's more challenging. So the Steelers, to me, need all of that. And I think that they need an outside corner. They need another outside corner to help with JPJ, and they need another slot specialist that they can rely on there as well.
No, we'll just get Cooper DeJean then. We'll just draft Cooper DeJean and just have him play the entire secondary and then return punts, and then we're all good. Yeah, we've got everything sorted then in one man.
Yeah, if you could draft him and then just clone him 3 times, then you would have the other safety next to Minka, the other outside corner, and the slot corner, and then you'd be good to go. So Perfect. We just need to. What we really need to be talking about is the advancement in cloning technology. That's really what we need to be talking about here on this show.
I think we'll be on it. We'll get on it. Kets, you start working on that.
Yeah. And we wonder why this show goes down rabbit holes every single week without fail.
Very much, yeah, Trev. That was very much on brand. I was wondering who had the near 20-minute mark where cloning was going to be mentioned.
Oh, yes.
We had the over under at about 19 and a half minutes. Nailed it. You're right though in terms of that slot corner. It's its own special beast, and unfortunately, I think we all here still shed a tear seeing Mike Hilton in the Bengals jersey,
Yeah.
because he played that role. He ticked every box, and including in the run game and in blitz packages as well.
Yeah.
He was a very, very special player.
Yep. And this cornerback class coming up has some really good nickel corner options. I like Max Melton from Rutgers. He's somebody that I liked even going back to before the season for summer scouting. Mike Sanderstill from Michigan is probably my favorite nickel corner in this class. I mean, the way that he defends the run, the way that he could play press coverage, he's basically the only reason why he's a slot only type of corner is just he's small. He's just a smaller dude, doesn't have the length. I think he's like 5'8", 5'9", something like that. But you mentioned Hilton and Kenny Moore for a long time now have been like this gold standard of nickel corners that you kind of draft a little bit later, but they mean so much to your defense. And I think that a guy like Mike Sanderstill from Michigan could be that next kind of a player.
Good stuff. Okay, shall we have a quick look at the 2024 draft and just get an idea, and very much for the listeners to start to understand what some of our options might be. So I can't share screen, so I've just sent you all a message with the players that are potentially available. So I've just run the PFF mock draft simulator. Steelers picking at 23.
Are we going to stay at 23? Honestly, might be picking a little bit higher than that, but for now, yeah.
You can customize the draft order, but yeah, that's, we don't know yet. So
put us at 10.
Steelers pick first. Sell the farm. Let's go crazy. But there's some good options on there for us. There's Cam Kinchins from Miami that we've already mentioned, the safety. Tyler Nubin. There's Mitchell, the wide receiver out of Texas. Leonard Taylor, defensive interior from Miami. Kalen King, cornerback from Penn State. And Xavier Legette from South Carolina. So there's a few names in and amongst there. Do any in particular jump out at you, Trev? Like, hammering the table for this guy. Who's your sort of red star amongst that mix?
I think I actually wonder if I like the wide receiver pick the most. Who else is there at corner if you scroll down a little bit? Because I know you mentioned King. Who else would be on the board there?
You've got Terrion Arnold. You've got Kamari Lassiter.
Okay.
You've got TJ Tampa.
Okay.
Quinion Mitchell.
Yeah. So so for those guys that are still on the board, I would go with Terrion Arnold. I think that he is, he was kind of like a spot on and off starter last season. This year, he has jumped into a full-time starting role opposite Kool-Aid McKinstry. And that's a tough job because Kool-Aid went into the year as one of the top cornerbacks in the country. And I think everybody knew it. So probably less targets at Kool-Aid McKinstry than regularly because you're not really game planning to throw to that guy. So Arnold got a lot of action, but he has not only held his own, but looked brilliant. 5 interceptions this year, a lot of forced incompletions, and really nice athleticism. Like, I think he's an even better athlete than McKinstry is. He's so explosive when it comes to the change of direction. And he is somebody who, for a Pittsburgh defense that likes to get aggressive at times, playing that press man coverage, right? That's why you draft a guy like Joey Porter Jr. with those long arms, with that press coverage kind of mentality and style. You want to be able to have 2 corners that you can trust to play man coverage on the outside. So I would go with Terrion Arnold here in the first round. I think that would be the best investment if you ask me.
Can we just pause there a second, gents? I've had a technical issue.
Oh, what's your
the
technical
PFF
issue?
draft simulator has a daily draft limit, which I've reached on both my phone and on my computer. And I accidentally did a 1-round draft rather than a 3-round draft.
Oh. Wait, there's a limit?
Not on the the free version. Gav and Sai have got the unlimited, but I haven't personally. Schoolboy error.
In fairness, though, Kets, it gives a great idea as to the sort of players on the board around that time.
Yeah.
So no, it's
Keeping it rolling.
It's definitely. I mean, yeah, absolutely. The list that you put together, there's 5 DBs on there, so that tells you all you need to know, really. So no, don't fret it. Don't fret it. Trev, moving on from the Steelers, one touch, if we can.
Mm-hmm.
You are a diehard Bucks fan.
I am
How's
indeed.
life? How are things? How are you finding the current season at the minute?
Well, it's the full Baker Mayfield experience, which is, it's never a dull moment, and I don't think it's been a dull moment at any point in Tampa. I think over the last 10 years, because they went from Jameis Winston and the unbelievable roller coaster that he is every time he takes the football field, to Tom Brady somehow, some way, and then now they're on to Baker Mayfield. So, look, I think that the Bucks are in a really interesting spot. They kind of have some options of, do you bring Mayfield back? Do you sign him long term? Do you sign him short term? Do you not bring him back at all? Because if you don't bring him back at all, then you're putting a lot of chips in the draft basket. And whether you want to look at this fortunately or unfortunately, they have a good chance to make the playoffs by winning this division, which is crazy because they're below 500 and they're not really a very good football team, if I'm being honest. So that really throws a wrench in stuff. Like if they're picking 19th, it's very, very different than if they were picking 10th, because if they don't make the playoffs, they're probably going to pick at or within the top 10. And that's a totally different conversation. Like you have an opportunity then to pick a Jaden Daniels, a Bo Nix, maybe if they like JJ McCarthy. I'm not as big on JJ McCarthy, but some people really like him. And so that to me is a much different conversation. So if they win the division, I don't want to say that's like not good, because it feels weird to like criticize winning, but the team is not very good. And I think them winning the division would kind of be fool's gold, because it would just be the fact that nobody else in the NFC South was good enough to win it. And instead, this is a team that needs more at quarterback, needs more along the interior offensive line, needs more at safety, needs more at linebacker, because I think Devin White's going to be gone, and certainly needs a lot more talent along the defensive line. So it's just a very weird, funny season to follow, because this is a below 500 team that is currently hosting a playoff game, that is in line to host a playoff game. So it's a very strange team to follow right now. I would just say that.
We feel exactly the same way. Trust me.
Yeah.
It's weird, but just not enjoyable. Unfortunately, it's stressful times at the minute.
Yeah.
Kets, do you want to then? I think we've hit the high level stuff. Let's have a bit of fun. Let's have a bit of crack. Kets, fire away there, mate.
So we have Kebab Corner on this podcast. We know that you have your 3 sides minimum with barbecue. Out of interest, what 3 sides would you have with barbecue if you're having a barbecue right now? What would you have?
Okay.
This is the most pressure question we've asked, I think.
Yeah, this is a lot here. Okay, so when I go out to get barbecue at a barbecue joint, the 3 that I typically gravitate towards is mac and cheese is my go-to like carb side. So like mac and cheese, and normally barbecue places do mac and cheese pretty well. So normally like you're not going to be disappointed. You're not going to be disappointed in that. I think collard greens would be next for me, because of all of the copious meats that I eat at barbecue. I have to fool myself into thinking I'm eating a little bit healthy, even though the collard greens probably come with bacon, if we're being honest. They're probably like cooked in bacon fat, but there's a little bit of green in there. So I love collard greens. It's very much like a down south thing here in the US. And then, so people, I don't know if enough people kind of realize this. The point of 3 sides minimum is not gluttony. It's not to just like, spend as much money as you can and eat as much food as you can, although that kind of goes into it a little bit. But the point of the rule is, every time you go to a barbecue place, normally if you get a plate, you'll get 1 meat and 2 sides and a biscuit. So normally that's how it comes. But when you go to barbecue places, there's so many great family homegrown recipes that you find at barbecue places. So the 3 sides minimum rule is like, I have my 2 go-to sides that I love. I love collard greens. I love mac and cheese. So I'm basically going to get those every single time because I love them. But then that 3rd side allows you to go to a barbecue place, and if you see something where, man, coleslaw looks really good, or man, this place looks like they do baked beans really well, or some sort of like street corner, whatever it is, it empowers you to go, you know what? Give me that 3rd side. That looks really good. That looks like it's, you guys do that as specialty. So my 3rd one typically is either coleslaw or baked beans, but because we're talking barbecue, I'll say baked beans. So my 3 would be mac and cheese, collard greens, baked beans.
Fantastic.
There you go.
That's
Like
cool.
the sound of
See,
it.
this is
That's a solid mix.
And now I'm hungry. So I blame you guys.
Oh no.
good stuff. Well, just to encourage your feeling of hunger, if you were having a kebab, what type of kebab would you have? What bread would you have it on? And what would you have with it?
Okay, you gotta walk my ignorance through. Like, what's this? What's the setup of a kebab here? What am I picking? What are my options here?
So bread-wise, you would typically either have naan bread or pita bread.
Oh, naan bread. Yeah. We're going with naan bread. Okay.
Class.
And then where do I even start with kebab meat? That's a wide-ranging question. So there's different types.
Can we do like lamb? Is that a thing? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we
I think
do?
so. I
Can
don't
we
see
do
why not.
that? I don't have it very often, but I feel like the last time I had a kebab, I had like lamb, like I had like a lamb kebab, and I was like, all right, this slaps. Like this is incredible. So
we were chatting about this before we jumped on. A kebab over here is like, in the UK, is like a staple for like a Saturday night lazy food.
Oh, hell yeah.
Or 2 a.m. You've been on the beers all day. I need some carb heavy. I'm not from the UK, so I'm from Ireland. So it doesn't translate a little bit differently. But I think I've had 2 in my life, so I am not qualified to add any.
I've not had
commentary.
too many. I've not had too many either. I think it's very much more a Northern England thing, personally.
Oh.
But so I mean, Ketz is. I think Ketz
Literally
has a
sat here
kebab.
with a kebab.
There he is.
I was
There it is.
gonna say, Ketz, you tell me what your ideal kebab is. That's what I want to hear. That more than the people
Ketz.
want to
Yeah,
hear mine.
what is on that kebab right now, Ketz?
So I've kept it quite simple today. I've gone standard doner kebab, salad on it, garlic mayo on naan bread. Nice and classic. I tend to have more sort of shish kebabs recently, like the thinner,
Yeah.
longer sort of strips of meat. That's quite nice to change it up from the standard doner. But yeah, I went doner today, but I do like a shish kebab recently.
That's what the people wanted to hear. They didn't want to hear my kebab order. They needed to hear from the expert. That's what they needed. So I'm glad that we got to that point.
I'm sure if Simon was here. If Simon was here, he would have some very strong opinions, I think.
Simon has a plain kebab with no sauce, no salad. I was almost like, because we have these sort of bets that we have if we have so and so's going in the first round. Like there was one about the Chase Claypool trade last year that Mike said, we'll get. Did you say we'll get?
Yes.
Lower than the first or second round.
I said a 3rd round pick or 4th, 5th. Later day trade.
I mean, that's what they should have gotten.
Yes,
they should have. They should have gotten lower.
Definitely. I don't think anyone in the state of Illinois is picking up a phone call from Western Pennsylvania any day.
Not a chance.
412, no.
Yeah, a little bit daylight robbery there. But Trev, cheers, mate. I appreciate time is of the essence for you, and you are probably up to your eyes as we get closer to the draft time, Senior Bowl. Everything is sort of coming into gear now, slowly but surely. But from everything our side, mate, thanks a million for jumping on and chatting, and for the listeners who have been living under a rock for the last couple of years who don't know where they can find you. Do you want to just give them a bit of a shout to see where they can listen to you? And such?
Sure. Yeah. PFF.com is where you can find a lot of the stuff that I'm doing as the lead draft analyst now, updating the big board that we have, writing a lot of the mock drafts. As you guys kind of mentioned on the show, not only do I do like the big common first round mock drafts, I'm going through and I'm doing a lot of team centric mock drafts as well. So we're doing 5 rounders right now. When the season gets over, we'll start to do like 7 rounders. So we'll try to give you guys an idea of like what a full draft haul would be and things like that. But NFL Stock Exchange podcast. You guys mentioned that very graciously. So again, after your listeners listen to this wonderful podcast, if they want to learn more about the draft, they can come over to NFL Stock Exchange. But this is a lot of fun, guys. I appreciate you having me on. Really appreciate you reaching out. And honestly, like, let's do this again when we get a little bit closer to the draft, or maybe even after the draft. We could talk about who the Steelers are going to pick, or who they already did pick, and we kind of assess it like that. So we'd love to do that another time.
Awesome.
Sounds great.
Appreciate that, Trev. Thanks a million, man.
Cool.
Thank you
Cheers,
very much.
guys.
So just to round off, follow the show at UK Steelers Pod. Follow Mark at Mesh NFL. Follow Mike at Mike_JF1. And follow our new and good friend Trevor at Tampa Bay Trey. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks a million.